world.
Okay. I'm going to call to order the Town of St. Paul Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for Tuesday, January 21st, 2025 at approximately 7 p.m. First order of business is to have a roll call. Bob?
Here.
Eric?
Here.
Tammy?
Here.
Carrie?
Here.
And Gary here.
Okay.
All right, second order is to do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the third order, or the third item on the agenda is public comments for non-public hearing items. And we have one submission, so please limit your time to 3 minutes. Would you please, it's Allison McIntyre.
Allison McIntyre, 1413 Lakeview Drive. Let's see here. First off is reading through the proposed fence ordinance. Seems a little out there, a misdemeanor. Seriously? I mean, I don't think I've ever seen this before. So that's a little concerning to me. I know this hasn't been, I don't think it's been put into the ordinances. This is just something that has been written and submitted, and then, but I find that a little harsh. So I'm hoping we don't see any more of that on any of the other ordinances. For some reason, I thought you had already had the PowerPoint for the comprehensive plan. It's what I've read through this. It's pretty extensive and makes me wonder if it can be set for our size. And so, do we get to see this?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
first
So,
Yeah.
do you remember respond? So, the fence ordinance, first of all, that has been prepared by
the mayor.
one elected officials.
Yeah.
And tonight is their first opportunity to review it. So we
Okay.
have a very long ways to go.
Okay.
And then as far as the comp plan, what was on the website, that was a draft PowerPoint.
Okay.
So this is basically the same thing, just a few changes to it. But you're absolutely, you can be in here, speak
Okay,
to it as
I
well,
was concerned.
absolutely.
And can you explain to me what this food and beverage overlay district development
The food-
means?
Yeah, the food and beverage overlay district, we've just had very preliminary discussions about it. So you would have a base zoning, and I'm just using this as an example, I'm not saying this is what's happening.
Yeah.
But let's say up here at Parker and Country Club, where you have.
Where we're already kind of
Right, right.
having that
Right,
happen.
so you have that base zoning that you could say like a commercial,
Yes.
but you could put a food and beverage overlay district that would have additional requirements, whether it's aesthetics, whether it's allowing restaurants to sell spirits. And probably another good example I can give you, a lot of communities will use, and you can correct me here because you're the planner too, but communities will use overlay districts along corridors where they want to have specific controls for that corridor. So when you go into Plano and you're going down the Dallas North Tollway, I can tell you when I go from Dallas to Plano. And the reason why I can tell you that is based upon the overlay district they have along the tollway. And so Preston Road through Plano has an overlay district.
Okay.
So you'll have a base zoning,
Okay.
but then you put an overlay district that you
Okay.
may have different requirements, whether it's aesthetics, whatever it could be.
Okay.
And so there have been discussions about and it's just very preliminary, about doing a food and beverage overlay district at key corners because of everything that's currently taking place. And obviously, some of those key corners, the properties are in the ETJ, right? So we want to find a way, whether it's through this comprehensive plan, whether it's through the food and beverage overlay district, to start working with the property owners to come into the town, but you're going to have to find a way for them to come into town and work with them instead of everything being done without any input into it. Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah.
And I think I used this, the last meeting we had, as an example. So when I was in Fairview, the entire commercial district along US 75 was in Fairview's ETJ. It wasn't in the town. We worked on developing what I would call a cartoon map originally. We brought the University of Texas Arlington in, and we brought residents in. We held charrettes, open meetings, to kind of get the community to talk about what would you like to see. And then it evolved to further refinement by bringing the Mesa Design Group in. And then this gentleman actually put together a comp plan for Fairview in 2005. But we worked with the property owners and what did you want to see happen? We want to have some input, or else you're just going to sit on the sidelines and things are going to happen without you. Heritage Ranch was not in the town of Fairview. It was in the town of Fairview's ETJ. Myself and the mayor went and spoke with the property owner, and we asked him what his intent was with that property. And we presented 3 or 4 ideas that the council would like for him to consider. And one of them was for it to be a passive park. And we knew that more likely wasn't going to happen. Then we presented like the Dude Ranch. That wasn't. But then we spoke about the possibility of having an active adult retirement community. And the gentleman who owned that property, he liked the idea. He wanted to lead the legacy project. We ended up, within 6 months after that meeting, sitting down with U.S. Homes, who was the original developer of that project, and negotiated a PV, annexed the property into the town. And there's a lot of driving factors behind working with that property owner. You go back and look at some of the old Collin County thoroughfare plans. Collin County was originally planning to bring Collin County Island Loop through there. So the town really want to take a little more controls in. We don't want that. Well, then you've got to come to the table and start. So you're either going to come to the table and start working with people around the edges of your town in order to hopefully accomplish something. But it's a give and take. It's a give and take. Where obviously they want to accomplish a financial reward or a legacy project. We got to find a middle ground. And I'd say it's even worse today than when I was in Fairview with state legislation that, you know, property owners right now can ask to be removed from your ETJ, and you have zero control. Right now, the control we have is very limited. That particular legislation is being challenged right now in court by several cities. So the authority and the ability for towns to regulate what's happening in them and around them has been watered down quite a bit.
Okay,
Right.
all right. Okay. That's all I want to know. Okay.
All right, and with that, we'll move on to number 4, with the consent agenda. Now, before we do that, you guys take a look at that.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we have a discussion on that rather than just give it a blanket approval on the agenda.
Okay.
Okay?
Do I need a second or?
No, I mean, you have a right to, because
Okay.
that's the only item, so you can have the discussion
Okay.
now.
On the second page of that, they're discussing regarding the P&Z goals for 2025 is the top 5 priorities. I don't recall this body saying that they want to develop a food and beverage overlay district. I know you want that, but I don't recall this board saying that was one of our goals.
We
I think
had
it's one of your goals, but I'm not sure it was the board's goal.
Well, I went back and listened to the meeting, and Gary reviewed the priorities at the end of that discussion, and these were the 5.
Okay.
So I mean, it's your, you can go back and listen to the meeting before you act on these minutes. I mean, we can bring the minutes up next time.
No, that's fine.
Uh,
You listen to the minutes.
Yeah.
And the other question I had was,
And let me clarify something, Bob. I bring recommendations. You ultimately decide.
right,
So if you're going to accuse me of it being my idea, that's not the way I operate. Maybe the way you operate, that's not the way I operate.
no, it's not how I operate. The other question I had was, item 3, it says that the mayor mentioned he was going to be forwarding 2 ordinances to review, graffiti ordinance and offense ordinance. And then later on in the meeting, we've got a graffiti ordinance, but the mayor's not mentioned on it. Eric is mentioned as the reason behind us having a graffiti ordinance. I was a little confused as to Eric's role and the mayor's role.
Well, the mayor did speak to a graffiti ordinance needing to be written and approved. And it has to do something with, I guess, some residents in Vista Oaks had painted some parking spaces on the pavement, and the mayor was in conversations with Travis Compton, our code enforcement officer, and Travis recommended to the mayor that we prepare a graffiti ordinance. And so I don't know if you reached out to Eric about it or what, but yeah, I mean, the mayor's been talking about it for some time.
Okay.
Scott, can I
Those are my
clarify?
questions.
Sure.
So, it started just like Scott explained, that Travis Caperton came out about some stripes that were painted on our street. So I reached out to him and I said, is this one of the code enforcement things that before we spend $6,000 painting the streets in Vista Oaks, we need to get those stripes removed? Is that something that falls under code enforcement? He said we couldn't do it without a graffiti ordinance. And so when he sent me something on it, I asked him and I said, you're telling me we cannot clean one of our own streets? And he sent me back a clarification and said, you don't need a graffiti ordinance to clean public property that's on private property. And so he misunderstood the question and clarified it. And so at that time, I think I told Scott that Travis had answered me, and we didn't need to do that in order to proceed with the job the council had approved for Vista Oaks. And so we don't have a graffiti problem per se that we need an ordinance for. I don't see it on private property. What we do have is some people painting stripes on our streets that need to be removed. And so we can do that with a general letter. So again, that's not something we need to necessarily take up. It's just something that was something that Travis had done, and then he had corrected it and pulled back.
Is there a reason why Eric presented it, though?
I'm sorry?
It came from Eric.
Yeah, I just thought I'd look into it, and, like I said, the mayor brought it up, and we've been talking years that we're missing ordinances.
Right.
It seemed like an easy one to just kind of look into and throw some sort of rough draft together.
Right.
For this next meeting here. And,
Very good.
Okay.
I mean, it is real rough. There's just parentheses that, need filling in the blank from attorney or, the new Parker court system or someone other than me that would know what penalties are.
Right. Thank you. Just need some clarity because I knew you sent it and I was like, what am I supposed to do with this? Other than I've been told to put it on the agenda, so.
Any other questions about the meeting minutes? Clarifications? Okay, I'll accept the motion to accept them.
I'll make a motion to accept them.
Can I have a second?
Yep, I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, they're approved. All right, now we'll get into number 5, the regular agenda. 5.1, discussion regarding developing a comprehensive plan.
Okay. We spoke about this briefly at the last meeting. We have Rick Lisner with us this evening from the Norris Design Group. We're going to do a very brief presentation regarding what is a comprehensive plan for, what's typically in a comp plan. But my goal with P&Z, not just this evening, but ultimately, is for you to make a recommendation to council on whether you want the town to move forward with developing a comprehensive plan or not. That's part of it. And if you do want to move forward with developing a comprehensive plan, what would you recommend to council as far as what elements should be in that plan? And Rick's going to cover that a little bit this evening. We don't have to solve everything tonight. This is just a start. But ultimately, I want a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission to the governing body, the city council, should we move forward with developing a comprehensive plan for the town. Rick?
Thank you, appreciate it. Hello there, everybody. How do I?
You're going to have to hit the arrows on there.
I told you.
On the keyboard.
Oh, on
Oh,
the
the
keyboard.
Keyboard.
Okay.
There you go.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I'll walk through this, and it's a nice, easy, casual presentation. If there's any questions during it, I'm more than happy to answer those questions. My name is Rick Leisner. I'm a principal with Norris Design in our Dallas office. We have about 18 people in our Dallas office, in our Texas office, as we like to say. And we do an awful lot of public sector planning and design. I kind of help run most of those projects and everything. So we're going to kind of talk a little bit about who is Norris Design, what is a comprehensive plan, what is a comprehensive plan in the state of Texas, because they're pretty different. Let's talk a little bit about you all, the town of St. Paul, and the elements that could possibly be in your comprehensive plan. We'll talk about a conceptual planning process, and then we can even have more Q&A. So, push that button. Norris Design is a 40-year-old planning and design company. We have only landscape architects and urban planners. We're not an engineering firm, we're not an architecture firm or anything. So we do a lot of planning and design work with property and land. We're very good at working with land. We're very good at working in public engagement and everything. We've won numerous state awards for our comprehensive plans. We have 130 people within the firm. We're headquartered out of that crazy state out in Colorado, in Denver. And we have offices in Colorado, Texas, and also in Arizona. Push the button. Basically, what we like to say is what we do in a summary is we're placemakers. We help to create and define place. We have landscape architects, urban planners, and branding individuals. Those branding people help to create, in essence, the brand or the identity of our public sector and or our private sector clients. If you take a look at the city of Sanger's website, Sanger, Texas, we created their logo and their brand as a part of a comprehensive plan. It was kind of a part of an economic development focus for them to kind of create their identity and who they wanted to be. So they kind of coupled that together in their planning process. The key people that I work with in our Dallas office is Grant and Colleen in developing these public sector plans. So just a little shout out to them. Push that button. These are just a brief listing of the plans that we've done. Not all of those plans were created by Norris Design. I've worked at a couple other organizations, but all of those plans I led and directed and adopted and everything. I've identified a couple up there with a little asterisk that has very strong relationships, similarities, when I think to the town of St. Paul. Basically, due to their size and the relationship, their dynamics between country and urban, their relationship and need to create economic development when at the time they really didn't have a vision for that. Fairview is one of those communities, just a tremendously dynamic and unique community that we worked with, created their plan, and it's still under adoption right now. Lake Dallas, that was a recent project over off of a water nice water lake and everything, so it had a lot of relationship to water and town center and everything like this. And also Broken Bow, Oklahoma. And it's just because it's kind of a small, compact community. And you're exactly right. Comprehensive plans are scalable both in their time and the amount of money that it takes to make them. So smaller community takes less time, less fee and everything. So we do a lot of small communities. We do a lot of large communities also. McKinney, Greenville, worked with the city of Dallas, Fort Worth and everything. So press that button. Also worked with Sunnyvale also. Catalyst Commercial, Jason Klonch, he's the individual holding that marker there. We partner a lot with them. They are market analysts and financial market people. Because in our discussions initially with Scott, it would be important, we feel, that you all have an economic model as a part of your comprehensive plan. That list back on that last page, probably over 50% of the plans we do have what we call an economic development element, an action element. And it relates typically to the linkage between land use and revenue creation through taxes and other components, some even overlay districts. And they are specialists at those economic components. So we typically partner with them, have a little sub-consultant relationship there at all our public engagement components, and so that we can communicate to citizens why it is important to understand the revenue and costs related to your build-out of your comprehensive plan. The comp plan is always looking at your entire town limits along with your ETJ. So, and we're always looking at build-out scenarios, meaning that day when it never really happens, but you become 100% developed. So that's kind of how your land use is determined, your transportation and your economic components. Boom, I'm getting way into the weeds way too early. Catalyst.
Can I say a little
Please,
something about
please,
that model? So the purpose of the financial model is to make certain whatever land uses you're putting in place, how will the town of St. Paul survive for the next 10, 15, 20 years based upon those land uses and revenues being generated. And this is a model that the town will have. It will be our ownership.
Yeah.
So if we ever change land uses, you can plug that into the model and see what the financial impact will be. Because you need to know what is it going to take to sustain the town of St. Paul for the next 10, 15, 20 years. So when we were going through the budget process this year, one of our council members had done a very rough review of, where are we going to be financially if we keep going on this route? And it wasn't good. So we have to start looking at what is it going to take in order to sustain the town of St. Paul in the long run. And that's where this financial model comes in.
And for instance, let me just give you a little snapshot of one of the beauties of this comprehensive planning process. We will develop 3 scenarios that shows different options for commercial in different locations. We will also be able to tell you what those revenue sources and streams are in relationship for each of those scenarios. And then we also can attribute the level of service for public safety, parks, and other components, other services that the citizens and community want. And in those meetings, the citizen provides input to the town leaders on the level of service and the quality or lack of, or more of a country component to what they would like to have. That then becomes kind of the mantra that the comp plan then follows and is developed and adopted. So, next slide. So it's really a very open, totally transparent process and everything. So a comprehensive plan. Basically, it is a blueprint for the future. It's a blueprint that shows you future land uses, transportation components, relationships and connections to all your adjacent cities and towns, how you'll utilize the lake and what type of open space and recreational opportunities you'd like to work with the Corps and others on those types of functions. So it'll talk about all those and give you action items to moving forward on that preferred vision that you heard from the community. So that's what a comprehensive plan is. Next slide is going to talk about what is that comp plan in Texas. And in Texas, you have, as we all love, you have great flexibility. The comprehensive plan can be tailored to just land use and economic development. It can have land use, parks, and economic development. It can have whatever the components that your community feels is vital for the success and the future. There are some basics. I would always suggest that you do a future land use, that you do a transportation, because transportation is vitally important to successful land use. You have to have access. You have to have economic development these days in communities that are anywhere near urban types of environment. So economic development is vitally important. And then there's a whole series of implementation tools. How do we implement that vision through action items that we've talked about in the comp plan? So those are the basic components. Others are parks and recreation, public safety, sustainability these days. There's some people we do sustainability plan components to it and everything like that. The parks and recreation component is very nice because if you have a parks and recreation and trail component down in Austin, they love to give money to communities that have adopted comprehensive plans that have had public input into that process. Next slide. Let's talk about the town of St. Paul and some of the elements that we'd just like to briefly discuss with you all. Next slide. Sorry, here's It's really not a specific element, but many times in some plans it gets defined as one, and it's the vision and goals. When we start off, the vision and goals are that white sheet of paper. All of the visions and goals come from the community. Many times we set up a set of tenets. What are those headings? Like community character, land use, mobility, economic development, environment. Talk a little bit about partnerships, community health, city government. We even talk about how to make city government, town government, to work better for the community and everything. So we'll have those tenets, and then those are the exact goals that the city of Athens in their Tomorrow comprehensive plan developed. So those were the specifics. And then of course, in the action item set of their comprehensive plan, it talked about how you're then able to put in a set of actions to achieve those goals. So you would have a specific set of vision and goals specific to the town of St. Paul.
And those goals would be measurable though, right?
I'm sorry?
Oh, we
Very
would
much.
measure.
Very
So
much.
every year, if we adopt a comprehensive plan with a vision, that plan would serve as your goals, and we come back and revisit them. Where are we? Are we accomplishing what we want? Do we need to change those goals? So it's not a document that sits on a shelf. It's a document that you will revisit every year. And are we accomplishing what we want?
I have had the good fortune to work with the town of Flower Mound in 2 comprehensive plans. We did their last 2 comprehensive plans. The first one was strategically extremely important. It divided the community between the actual suburban community where they had sewer and water and everything typical, and then they drew a line, and in essence that sewer and water did not cross that line, and the rest of the community became rural and equestrian, and is that wonderful community of Flower Mound that we all know about these days. That first comprehensive plan was the determining factor in deciding who the next mayor was, because it was all about whether or not the community would follow that adopted plan. It was so important to them. So that's what your comprehensive plan can do, because you get the will and the community buy-in and the participation in the process, that it is not just the city's plan, it's everybody's plan. And it's a livable, it's a live document to where if there's changes in the community, sure, it can be adjusted, but you're able to then, every year, you would like to see city council have a strategic meeting to where they're saying, how successful have we been on our land use goals? How successful have we been on our economic development goals? Do we need to tweak them up? Do we need to turn them down? Are we happy with what's going on? So, yeah, it's a metric that can be measured.
You mentioned you did two for Flower Mound. Why the second one?
The second one,
How far apart were they?
they were, well, Flower Mound had a lot of growth going on at that time, so I think they're about 11 years apart.
Okay.
The second plan is the first smart comprehensive plan in the state of Texas. They wanted to institute a few more controls to make sure that people could not go around things and everything like this. So it was to follow that first plan, but it was to then make it what is considered a smart growth plan. And it's the first smart growth plan in the state of Texas that was approved and adopted. Both of those are online. Believe me, they've got tons of data on their comp plans. And in fact, that second comprehensive plan was so important to the city, they had over 140 public meetings in the development of it. Yes, I lost a lot of hair in that process. So, yeah, Mayor Mary DeLuca, she was very instrumental in that effort. Yeah. In fact, all these comprehensive plans in all these communities are online, so that's a good resource to take a look at. Next slide. Elements, land use, and the real thing to talk about in land use, this is future land use. It's always, I always kind of err sometimes in not putting future. It's future land use. There we're looking at images from the Fairview Comprehensive Plan. You'll notice that nice little, what was that word you said initially? You said earlier today, cartoon map.
Yeah.
It's cartoon. I don't really like that word, but there's a cartoon map, that little inset there, that showed the concept of what was developed in Fairview that the citizens just loved. Because when we did this comprehensive plan, there was not enough retail to provide for the high quality of services that the citizens of Fairview wanted. They were also drastically concerned about, they didn't want the encroachment of commercial into areas that they valued for residential. So we created that concept sketch, the cartoon, that showed the red, all the commercial, and we mean all, was going to be on the western side of Greenville Avenue. I think that's what it's called up there. And that was even before the town center and all that crazy commercial that's there these days. Interesting part of this is, as a part of the implementation, a developer went forward with some of the commercial development and said, we would like to partner with the town, and they gave them a site for a new town hall, and they also paid for 30% of the construction of City Hall. So they got a new town hall, 30%, and the land was totally given to them. So there are partnerships in economic development that can be created for other things besides town halls and everything, but it's, you know, if the community lets for certain actions to happen that are beneficial to private development, there should be a reward to the community. So amenities, clearly there's revenue, but you know, through taxes and everything, but yeah. So that was the concept, that all the retail was going to be on this side. It would protect the large lot land use. The green area was where some of the large master plan community that you talked about at one time was going to be a park, but then it became a senior community and everything. So it had just all the large lot residential was far to the east. So, and then we developed a set of land use, detailed land uses. You can see there's different lot sizes, protection of creek corridors, equestrian trails in some neighborhoods, redevelopment strategies, you know, because there's some areas to where the development pattern is already in some communities that's getting a little older, getting a little tired, and there's opportunities for redevelopment. So working with the existing ownership to define what type of land uses is appropriate to that area, and then putting it in a land use plan then allows it to move forward for rezoning. It's always important to know a land use plan is not a zoning map. If we're so fortunate to work with your community, 2 maps will be in here, hanging always on the wall. Your zoning map and your future land use map. They're never exactly alike, but you're wanting to move toward as much similarness as they can be. Okay, that's good enough on land use. But take a look at Fairview. That was a good comp plan with a good amount of public input, real nice, high quality community, very similar to yours. Let's hit the next one. Talk again, financial model for sustainability. Probably 50% of the plans we did have an economic component. This is the map on Athens. This is looking at one of the scenarios for growth, one of the 3. So what basically you can expect is the key thing is it's all about ROI and the return on investment in that future land use plan. What are the revenue streams? What are your current taxing model? Jason will work with you on that. He'll want to know all that data so that we can then make those scenarios true to the tax code and everything. It links land uses to revenue. We then make sure that the plan has a whole set of actionable programs and components. It talks about development costs, it talks about phasing, it talks about location impacts, and the participants. Many times, who's the lead participant in a particular action. So a whole series of components. And again, all that information comes forward for those different scenarios. It's really a magnificent process because you get through, and we don't, from the set of goals that the community gives us initially, then we develop 3 scenarios specifically to those goals. There's no paper horse or anything. There's no 2 fake ones in there. There are 3 that could be realistically attractive, and they're a little bit different. And they pose, people scratch their head, and they say, wow, this is kind of interesting. Some things I don't like, some things I do like, and almost always what happens is it's a part of all 3 that come together to be that preferred scenario. That's a nice thing. It doesn't always happen that way, but many times it does. There's good components in all 3, and that would many times. In fact, they never pick one holistically. They never have. Kind of amazing, because there's good stuff in all 3, and that's kind of what you try to find is which way were we able to find the values of the community as it expressed in the future of land use and development. I mean, and as I drive through this community right now, I almost feel like, wow, I mean, you all are under construction. I mean, you're more in construction than Fairview was when we started the whole Fairview process. So your need for such a document, I think, is vitally important. And it's important on 2 sides. It's important from an economic standpoint to provide you the revenue, to provide you then the ability to give the citizens the services they want. And also, it's important because the plan will protect existing land uses that need to be protected. If you don't put in those types of protections, then they'll be up to the whim of whoever wants to offer them the right magical amount of money to change. And then you'll see that crescendo of land uses that will then decline because somebody went against what might have been thought of the right way to go, they decided, no, they wanted to do what was best for them, and it ended up hurting all their neighbors. Okay, let's keep going. This was part of the economic development plans where we have a whole series of specific actions. We define what the action type is. We talk about the time frame. We talk about the responsible department or agency and the partnerships that help to create that action and everything. This is part of the actions, I think, that came out of the Athens plan. If you take a look at Greenville and Sanger, they both have wonderful, wonderful detailed actions that are very similar to this. And Jason worked with us on all three of those. So, very, very good. Next. Thoroughfares. And it used to be called, we used to call them all thoroughfares elements. Now they're mobility elements because they include all our modes of transportation. Hiking and biking and cars and trucks and school buses and all this. So we develop a whole set of cross sections that then become your city standards that would probably follow best practices for mobility. They would probably relate to many of the communities around you. You have excellent cities around you that are surrounding you and everything that has a set of mobility standards. So we just want to make sure that those are documented. And then as development occurs, developers build to the standards you want. That's kind of nice. Next slide. Drainage management. This is from our comp plan. That image is from our comp plan up in Broken Bow, Oklahoma. They had extensive issues about drainage management. So we went in, developed specific best practices for how you manage drainage issues, retention, detention ponds, making sure that that was master planned for the build out of the community. And also looked at some recommendations in areas that were kind of already tight and everything. So that's a good plan to take a look at for that one. Broken bow. Yeah, Broken Bow, excuse me. Good plan. Next, please. Public safety, many times in communities like yours where there's potential of growth to happen, you have to make sure that your public safety plan would have the same types of targets toward employment and eventual population. So we did a very detailed one in Athens. This is looking at the city of Athens and their fire department and public safety. And again, it just works with the current metrics that you have and extrapolates to the future. But the key word there is level of service. What level of service do you want? How quick do you want those two organizations to respond to you? And that then relates to facilities and people. Next, please. Planning process. This is where it boils all the way down into making the sausage, as they say. Next, please. This is kind of the planning process that we typically always use. This is the one that we use for Greenville. It ended up being close to 2 years, but that's because it's a big community that needed a lot of complexity with it had freeway issues as related to land use, and it has a very detailed downtown. But the phases are exactly correct. What I would say the typical process for a community like the town of St. Paul could be possibly 10 to 12 months, to be quite honest. First phase is project initiation, community status, and identification of goals and objectives. We would also establish a project website if you would like. Typically, a lot of citizens like to engage the process from the comforts of their home versus coming to public meetings. So these days we're doing a lot with our websites and our branding of that website so they can get in and give all the comments that they need. We would also establish a stakeholder, we'd have stakeholder interviews where we probably talk to 40 to 50 individuals for about 30 to 40 minutes about issues in the community. So in essence, at the end of that week of talking to those individuals, we have a real good snapshot of concerns, positive, negative, moving forwards. So we get a great deal of input. And the lightning bolts up there are the steering committee or advisory committee. We've established an advisory committee that would meet monthly as a part of understanding what they're hearing within the community, but also of passing through some of the draft materials of our planning process to them before we go out for public comment and everything. The second phase is the development there in purple, is the creation of those 3 scenarios. You'll see those 3 bars there. That's the creation of those 3 scenarios. The stars are the public meetings. Each phase has a set of public meetings. But the scenarios, you'll create the 3 scenarios in the second phase. You'll then have a very robust public meeting with presentations and drawings on the wall. And you'll be able to see where you go from the goals and objectives to those 3 scenarios and how it's solved, those goals. And then kind of the metrics of each one. From the input that we received in that meeting, we then create a preferred scenario. We then go immediately to the second star in the purple line to test that, to see if we heard what was correct from the citizens and if we need to tweak. And then the green component is getting into the actual document itself and the implementation actions that are needed. And then there's a public meeting in that process also, along with the adoption process. That's kind of the standard 3-legged process that we go through. Next slide. Advisory committee, just like we kind of mentioned, always we have an advisory committee. Sometimes they can get really large, sometimes they're about this size, which is kind of the standard. We've had some to where they've been over 20 people. But typically they make up a key, they're composed of a key cross-section of the community. Key landowners, key business owners, HOA presidents or leaders, a couple council members, a couple P&Z members, and other connected citizens, to where when we meet with you all monthly, almost always in person, we get a good cross-section of input as we develop a plan and everything. We can also set up a technical committee, and many times a handful of our plans also include that, to where it would include technical members in the community, typically traffic, drainage, civil, PE types, and that would meet bi-monthly. And what that does is it brings those technical people in the process, it brings them up to speed during the process so that they can see where the plan is going, because they're going to be some of the ones helping to implement that. Next, please. This is an example of a project website. This is a site that we're doing for a project. We're doing the Parks and Recreation Plan for Texarkana, Texas right now, Advanced Parks in Texarkana. So again, it just has 24/7 connectivity to the community. All the data, all the information is in that plan, is in the website, so they're able to go on and at their leisure, give us input, and they are vitally important to today's success. So that's important on the website. Next slide, please. Public engagement. These are kind of the components to many of our plans. There's always public meetings and workshops. There's those stakeholder interviews like we talked about, 30 to 40 of them. That's a little example of questions over there on the other side. We go through a draft and final identification of goals. The goals are always in a room if we're having a public meeting, because you have to understand what are the targets that we're trying to achieve through those technical components. We develop a logo and a website specific to your community. We work with the advisory committee monthly, and we then of course have links through your all's Facebook page to the town. Develop those types of graphics to get around the communities, to let people know that they're invited to public meetings. and that is a lady right there who was at one of our public meetings in Texarkana. We did their comprehensive plan. So a lot of times, people like to give input, but they don't really want to talk. So we develop a whole set of tools of how to help people give input through non-speaking types of ways. Next, please. And that concludes the end of this brief little presentation. I'm happy to talk about anything as it might relate to the comp plan experience, to the conceptual process, to engagement, to what might be unique in your town.
I feel a lot of value in a lot of stuff you're doing. I just, in other towns I saw them, there are 1,000 people, and almost every one of them have some major thoroughfare, whether it's 35, 75, 30, something that they can build off of. We've got Parker Road, we got Country Club here, and a park down there, and sit on the lake here. And as far as generating income, I guess the return on investment would be, all that sounds really things you need to do for the future. It's just your return on investment, and I don't know what y'all charge, what anybody else charges, but to get payback from the source of income we have is pretty minimal, and most of it's residential and not a whole lot of area that encompass, even in our ETJ, much commercial type income. A couple of spots maybe for restaurants and all, and a couple of storage buildings along the way maybe, but that's, that's what goes through my mind. Because every one of those, I'm familiar with every town you talked about.
Yep.
They've got some kind of thoroughfare that they've got commercial strips that, whether it's warehouses, commercial buildings or something, and we don't have much of any of that around here to help. Not that we couldn't build some,
Yeah.
but I don't see anything in the near future. I don't know.
Well, I don't know if I fully agree with you. You may not have like a 75 or George
We don't have
Bush.
75. We don't have a
But
we
you
don't
do
have
have a corner at the Parker and Country Club that's developing that could come into the town eventually. You do have Park and Parker, they're gonna intersect, and there's a lot of vacant land around that area. And it's in the ETJ. And one element we haven't talked about is, the lake. What's the potential of the lake? So I do believe you have assets that are available for you to develop or work with the property owners. It's a matter of whether you want to do that or not. You have a very small footprint as far as the town.
That's the deal.
The toe print.
Huh?
It's a toe print.
Pretty much. But yet you have some key corners and other areas around you that you should at least start putting a plan together. Or, if you have the opportunity to sit down with a property owner in the ETJ, what is it that you'd like to accomplish? Or do you just want myself and the council to go out there and start those type of negotiations? We want to get community input. So I agree with you, you're not a Fairview, you're not another community that has a large corridor coming through you. But then again, you're not 15 square miles on Fairview. You're just under 2 square miles.
Can I ask how much land are we talking about that we can use? Like, we're talking about, it's kind of what you were saying, like, it's all small.
Yeah.
How much are we talking? Do we have an idea?
We don't have an idea of that. That's something we can look at when we're preparing this comprehensive plan.
Yeah.
And the other thing you have to keep in mind is that things will redevelop. You spoke about it briefly. And these are just a lot of assumptions right now. But Keene Landscaping, 10 years from now, that property may be so valuable it doesn't make sense for Keene Landscaping to be there. That it could move on. You'll see that type of redevelopment take place. And are you going to be sitting on the sidelines with no plan as far as how you want to work with that property owner? Or do you want to have a vision and just let it happen? And that's okay. If that's what the community wants, that's fine. But I hear a lot of complaints about things that are taking place in the town.
Well, but go back to what I said, I didn't say, I see value, a lot of value
Right.
in the plan.
Yeah,
And I think it's gonna go back to what's the cost of the plan and return on income
Right.
from that plan
Right.
is what I'm, my mind is struggling with a little bit. We have to really value, because I mean, you're talking about a lot of time and energy and things going on to get to there. Once you get it in place, yeah, you can, it's a living document, and you can adjust it as things go. And if they sold that plan, then you might change it here or that. But I'm just, in my mind, getting it started.
yeah, there's probably one thing that I would most want everybody to consider. You all right now have a lot of construction going on and some future construction where it's gonna go from 2-lane roads to 4-lane divided types of roads. Well, the number one thing development looks for is the number of cars that pass by a property before it becomes a different use. Residential uses are really all about 2-lane roads. Once you start to get larger roads, you know, people are gonna look to turn that home over there into a business. And it could go along the entire Parker corridor that's right now under construction. And it's kind of like, well, do you want that to happen? Do you want to cluster that? Do you want that retail or professional office to be clustered near intersections? Because it can be if you have a plan. You also have the ability to protect that residential edge. If there are areas that are large lot or smaller lots, if those homes want to stay residential, well, we can create a treatment along the edge of that road that makes it's not going to be commercial. And you can also say the land use plan calls that out as being residential. If you don't have a plan, all it is up to somebody knocking on the door to turn Mrs. Smith's home into a vape shop or something like that. And so, you know, that's what happens.
Currently,
I
think
can
most of
show
that
you.
along there is single residential. I mean, it's 1.5 acre residential, so that would have to be changed. But no, I get you, I understand what you're saying. It's definitely, you know,
Yeah.
it's a huge traffic right now, it's a mess right now, but once it's finished, it is gonna be, it's gonna be nice, it should be
Yeah,
nice.
it's gonna be very nice.
But-
But it's a scalable plan. You all don't have an interstate or a highway, but you have some major commercial corridors that are gonna be created through the size of that road. That road is not gonna, best business practices, best development practices, 4-lane roads have commercial development along them unless you control that. So unless you want commercial along that, and again, what type of commercial? Are you gonna control where the parking goes? Are you gonna, you know, are you gonna let it be commercial residential? I mean, if you don't set a vision and a plan to either protect a neighborhood of large lot as being that, and then allow commercial to go in other places, that it's just basically, it's a much finer scaled comp plan than some of these examples. But it's really the exact same types of considerations. Where do you want that commercial to be? And what is the tax revenue that the community gets that it then provides resources? Fixes the drainage issues, provides all the types of services that you need to provide as a town to the level of service that the citizens are saying they want. It just brings that equation into play for your 2 square miles of town and including its ETJ.
For the cost of something like this, that's for like the plug and play, right? You do everything within your organization. But is there an option for smaller towns like ours where you provide the project management of it and give us the tools to be able to do some of it in-house so that it lowers the cost on it?
We can give you a whole bunch of different ways to keep the costs within what you're needing to do, for sure. I would, yes,
Okay.
yes. There's ways to work around this and everything, yeah.
So what is the smallest, population-wise, town that you have done one of these plans for?
Broken Bow, Oklahoma is probably one. We also did Piedmont, Oklahoma,
And how many, what was their population?
under 5,000.
Under 5,000,
Yeah.
okay. And in terms of square miles, what would be the smallest area?
About a mile and a half.
About where we are.
Yeah, about a mile and a half.
Was that Broken Bow or was that?
Piedmont, yeah, yeah. But again, they all involve they involve all the exact same relationships, you know, residential relationship to commercial. The Flower Mound plan is a really interesting plan to look at because inside of that plan is about 8 different specific plans to where we literally got lot to lot, neighborhood to neighborhood, and designed the commercial corridors and the relationship to residential in there. They wanted to make sure that that was adopted as part of their comp plan, that access points would be set, no negative traffic into this neighborhood, because those are the pressures here in North Texas that happen with development. A
I
lot.
through there on a motorcycle with 1171 was just a nice windy road for motorcycles.
Yeah.
Now I wouldn't get on there with a lot to turn on it.
1175 is like a 6-lane freeway going through there. Yeah.
Was it Farmers Branch, you said you had 140?
No, that was Flower Mound.
Flower,
Yeah. And we got to know that cafeteria really well.
How long of a time frame was that?
That was a real long one.
Yeah.
That was the one that had all the detailed specific plans that really weren't initially even in the time frame, but to create consensus, the mayor and council knew that we had to get those citizens together in a room and come up with a plan.
Because the one graph that you showed, it was a year and a half
Yep.
time, it had like maybe 5 public meetings.
Yep.
So
Yep.
140.
Well, now that would be when you would include steering committee meetings and public meetings and neighborhood meetings. I mean, yeah, it was lengthy.
Just a lot of different meetings.
Yeah, and in fact, I mean, that's kind of the rocket ship of public meetings that we've ever done, believe me. Most, we've developed plans with only 2 public meetings.
So 140 meetings, was it 5 years long?
It was about 2.5 years.
2.5.
2.5 years, yeah.
Don't expect that here.
No. And again, it was an area that was having a lot of development pressures, and it had a lot of disparity between what people wanted, you know. So, you know, when I drive through your community and I see the beautiful land, and I see the construction trucks already happening and everything, and I see these beautiful large lot homes and everything, I'm going, my gosh. Either that's a development site or we need to protect that house. And I don't know what, because we haven't talked to the citizens. But, you know, and then the desire usually is to cluster. You cluster like land uses together. You cluster residential to protect it. And you cluster commercial development to enhance it, to make it the node of where people go to buy goods and services. You design how the access is. You design, you know, how you get in and out safely and with TxDOT's input and everything like this. So, you know, it's a very simple exercise. It doesn't take long.
So, sorry again, with this plan, like right now, we have these houses are zoned residential. You're saying at any time, now that Parker Road's gonna be built, they could say, I'm gonna buy this house and I'm asking to make it go commercial, right? They still have to ask for it to go commercial. So with this plan, they don't get the option? Or can they still have the option? Because if they still have the option and we can still approve it, not we, the council could still approve it to go commercial, then, you know, what's the difference? Other than just having that's the good intent of what we.
Oh, no, there's much more than intent.
Okay.
There's the fact that the citizens of your community have said that preferred land use plan is where we've invested our time and energy. And these people up here, council and P&Z, better follow that plan or we'll get new people up here. Because that's the plan of the citizens.
But how does that work with a special usage permit? How do you protect that?
You can always try to change something. And if the developer has a better mousetrap, well then of course let them present something new and creative that the citizens would like and would be highly marketable. And maybe it is a good idea. But most likely it shouldn't be something that would harm the adjacent residential neighbors that would be on both sides.
I totally get it, I'm just trying
Yeah.
to see if
No,
there's,
no.
what's the difference?
It's a very good question.
Because
You always have rights to
Yeah,
solicit a change.
right.
But again, if those two plans are in this room and the town is invested in what that vision is, I sure hope that the community would follow a majority of that vision. They won't follow it exactly.
Right.
you know.
Bob?
Rick, with you're probably more in tune with the current climate of the legislature and the court systems and all that, and I know in the past, they've upheld cities' rights to, they have upheld property owners' rights to not encourage spot zoning. Is that still the trend?
That is still the trend.
Okay.
That is still the trend, but landowners have a lot of rights here in Texas. That's why you can always,
But the town at least has that behind them to
Yes.
help prevent
yes,
somebody in the middle of the neighborhood going commercial.
yes, yes.
Spot zones.
Yes, you do, but, yeah, you definitely do, but the thing is that many times, as I drive by, I'm seeing all these beautiful homes, somebody's property, somebody's getting close to retirement, or they don't have heirs, and they're, for the right price, they're out of here. And that's what happens. That's just what happens. And you just want to make sure that we collectively, as a town, we work together to define our vision. And it's a vision that's about land use and development and quality of life. But it also has a big economic component to it. So you're able to know what properties would be commercial, retail or whatever, and what's that revenue stream that the town can then expect that 2 mayors from now or 6 mayors from now, they know what the revenue stream is going to be and how we're going to handle trash pickup, how we're going to handle new water service when we need improved water service, and all those components. And again, a nice part of that process is those 3 scenarios. We go into those meetings not knowing exactly which is the preferred one, but it becomes very apparent in those meetings, the areas that the citizens like. Hopefully, you all in council then say, this is working, It's going to, it in essence provides a vision for the community, and it gives all its city staff people, the tools to implement that vision. And it doesn't have to be expensive.
Okay, so obviously you feel that money and cost is an issue because we're not terribly rich, but you did mention return on investment, and of course tailoring a plan, if we went that way, we really need to understand, okay, how are we going to start?
Yeah.
And how are we going to make sure that we're spending money that we're going to get a return on? Things are changing, that's true, very true. Look outside, there's piles of dirt. But there's another road too, Park Road,
Yeah.
and that intersection is going to be big, and I think it's to the east, there's a lot of land that's open, right? Right?
Right.
And then, of course, this intersection, Country Club and Parker, is pretty big too, and that's gonna be developed, right?
Right.
You mentioned something
Right.
earlier tonight, is it okay to say it?
Yes.
Okay, so I mean, there's a Tom Thumb going on in the northwest corner, which is gonna be a pretty big deal, right? But my point is, there are things changing without a plan. That's kind of a problem, but, you know, breaking the bank and not getting a return on it is also a problem. And a big problem and a concern probably people don't, how is this gonna be successful? And as, you know, and I don't have any idea what you cost or what your proposal would be. I mean, is there a way we can figure out some of this before we actually commit?
Oh my goodness, yes. Goodness.
Because, I mean, here's a big pile of money, here you go, okay, now what do we do?
No.
That's not wise.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. No, that's not wise.
So, I mean,
What I would suggest is, hearing all this good information, I really appreciate your time. If you all told us the elements that you feel are critical to having in your comp plan, then I can go back and work with Jason to develop an outline scope and put some numbers to it, probably put a couple different sets of numbers to it, and then get that to Scott, and Scott can get that to you all, and you all can tell, are we close, are we getting there, or do we need to get a little more creative? And yeah.
okay, well, we do meet once a month, the same third Tuesday. At least that would give us a little bit more comfort. I mean, we saw your presentation. Yes, a lot of cities benefited from this, and we'd obviously like to benefit as well, but we can't break the bank.
No, I
Doing it.
clearly understand that. Fair enough.
Sorry, Bob, I didn't know.
Yeah.
No problem. So on our current zoning ordinance, we've got a land use table. So we've got light industrial, commercial retail, office, and I think there may be one other one, but they're specifically designed. So let's say Joe down here owns a property and it's zoned commercial retail. And our chart shows all these uses are allowed in that. Now, if we go ahead and start changing the definitions and what's allowed in each zone, is there a liability that the town would inherit if we tell this property owner, well, no, you can't do that anymore. You can't have a gas station on this lot anymore because we've changed it. They'll say, well, wait a minute.
Yeah.
You guys have changed horses on me. Does the town inherit a liability by doing that?
I would say in essence, the beauty of that planning process is the gentleman or the group of people that want to do that gas station would then start coming to our meetings. Make sure that particular locations, they say, hey, you know, that's a great commercial corner, that's a good commercial corner. And we probably say, hey, that is a good commercial corner.
Yeah.
So you know, it really can kind of work with them and ease and streamline the process. You know, unless they're trying to do something willy-nilly in places where they shouldn't do willy-nilly. You know, but we'd be happy to let them know, hey, you shouldn't do that there.
Yeah, we've got a big tract over here that abuts a neighborhood, and it's zoned commercial retail, but it's pretty loosely defined, so if we tried to tighten up the definition, I think it's up for sale right now.
Which track's that?
It's the one that borders on the apartment complex in Wiley, fronts
Oh,
on
yeah, the
1378.
8 acres.
I think that was up for
That's
sale.
one of the areas I think that we'll redevelop, even with, I probably shouldn't be saying this, but I think the, what was it, Lakeview Shopping Plaza and the 8 acres, I think there's a lot of potential that being redeveloped, and what would we like for that to look like in the future? I think you got a couple areas that are primed for being redeveloped, and we need to hear from the community, what do you want that to look like? Because eventually the land becomes too valuable. I think both your existing shopping centers that you have, Lakeview Shopping Plaza, and I forget what the other one is over here with the Chevron, I think they're gonna start filling a pinch, especially with Tom Thumb and their strip centers coming in. Well, we have our corner, and I wouldn't be surprised if those properties don't flip eventually. I wouldn't be surprised if other developers come in and try and encourage them to sell it, especially with that 8 acres there, and redevelop it. And it may be where we want to sit down at the table with the owner of the 8 acres, and we become proactive in who owns Lakeview Shopping Plaza, who owns the 8 acres, partnering, come together with a group of people and take the vision of the community and try and make it happen. No different than one of the examples I used earlier about Fairview, Heritage Ranch. We had 3 or 4 ideas that we presented to the property owner. It's in the ETJ. And we became proactive in what that development was going to look like, even though it was in the ETJ. And that's what we need to start to do. We need to start coming to the table with ideas that hopefully the community and P&Z and council have agreed on, that we can sit down and start speaking with these property owners of redevelopment or just development in general. But right now, I have no, I mean, it's typical, no different than where Fairview was at one point. We want to keep it country. We all understand that. But things that are around you in the ETJ are going to change. And yes, you have limited control. But to think that you don't have tools in your toolbox with the potential of working with property owners to have something developed that's in the best interest of the community, you do have those tools and you can make it happen. It's just a matter of whether you can get the property owner to work with you. And you have to open up that door. So before I go and start speaking with whether it's 8 acres or the shopping center or something in the ETJ, I need some sort of direction. I need some sort of vision, or else I'm just going out there and taking the best shot. But we can sit here and do nothing, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, and you can't, it's kind of the reactive or proactive.
Right.
Proactive advertises, tells the community to come involved, get involved, give us your ideas, come see these different scenarios, give us your specific inputs. Because again, we're talking about 2 square miles. I mean, we're going to have right down to the gnat's eyebrow of where you like it, and do you like this, and do you like, it's almost a site plan of what we're kind of coming up with. And it'll give you all a lot of ability to then implement that site plan and follow it to the standards and quality expectations that the citizens gave you. And
But to circle back to my question, the liability the city would have by redefining what's allowed in the particular zone from what it currently is, would a property owner have a right to come after the
So
city for something?
if there's an existing use, and if we change the uses that are allowed, could we be challenged on that? So,
Yeah. Or if there's not an existing use, if it's already zoned commercial, it's sitting there, and we kind of redefine what commercial retail is versus some other division of.
I think we're talking about 2 things here, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
You're talking about the zoning ordinance
Right.
and
Talking about the
and
zoning
specific
ordinance.
components in that. Once you do your land use, once you do your comprehensive plan, you might and most likely would want to modify your zoning ordinance. So therefore then I would suggest you do just some simple edits in your zoning ordinance that then follows the vision of your citizens. But at no point is the plan, or is there a stop and development does not, can always happen. The zoning modifications would have public meetings and input and everything like that, and, so yeah. But they are two different parts.
Yes.
The
But if
plan,
you change it, you'd have to notify
that's,
and
yeah.
make sure everybody who
Yeah.
owned that land was aware of it and go through all the proper
right.
procedures.
Even during the planning process for the comprehensive plan, development occurs. Yeah, and some of it might not be exactly where the vision's going, but it's what the property owner wanted to do, and they have that right to do that.
Well, good presentation. You did a good job, and it's very impressive, all the towns around here you work with in the city. So it looks like y'all do a good job where you wouldn't have, I'm sure all the cities talk to each other. So thank you.
They kind of do, but again, it's, each one is very different, very, very different. Yours would be very different and very special and everything like this. So we appreciate the opportunity to just be here tonight and talking to you about the opportunity to work together.
How long has Norris Design been doing this?
40 years. This is our 40th anniversary. I haven't been doing it 40 years. Getting close to 40. Yeah.
So what I've heard is that we'd like to work with North Design, see what the cost would be potentially. Correct?
Interested in, to see what the cost is.
Okay. So maybe what we
Take
need,
the next step and to see if you can tailor something. You know, you said come up with 3 suggestions.
Yeah, I thought we'd give you some options to
And then
how we
see
can
if we want to go forward after that.
Yeah.
You know, bring it back so we can look at that.
well, I thought you had mentioned, and we need to do tonight, but it's been lengthy already. But we had talked about identifying elements
Oh.
that you would want to have.
That would help, that would help.
Is there like a checklist of the elements we can kind of discuss and
Well, we went through them this evening.
this one?
Yeah.
I'll try to get back to it.
I don't know if I had one slide that had everything on it, but it's really,
There's one that was entitled elements, I was trying to get back to that one.
And Scott,
There it is.
would it
it's kind of that.
be available
That-
for the
that-
next meeting to maybe even have some of those areas that you're talking about, the ETJs and some of those areas that are of concern of where we know it's going to change? You could have that on a map or something so that we can see, because I don't know them all. I know what you're talking about roughly, but I don't know, and it would be cool if we could see that
Well,
so in real time.
Yeah, I'll do that, but even if you look at this map right here, which is the Park Road extension going down to Spring Creek, you know, our ETJ is right here. And down here and here. And so this corner right here is going to be where Park and Parker. That area will redevelop, and a lot of that's in your ETJ. A lot of this is in your ETJ. So you can expect a lot of this to change in the next 10, 15 years.
Or 5.
Or 5, even. Because this is going to be a major intersection right here. And yes, things are happening already up here at Park and Country Club, but you have an opportunity right now to really put a footprint in place what you want this to look like.
And
But I'll do what you asked. I'll
Yeah.
put that together.
One of the first things that attracts redevelopment opportunities is large parcels.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I just don't know what we have left, so it's hard for me to see. I know what's along Parker Road, because I've driven that, but, you know, like, with new roads, we don't know what's coming, so I just want to kind of see. I didn't realize that's what that map was, so I can look it up.
Yeah.
Just so we can see what we're working with, because if it's only a couple pieces, then it's a lot less in-depth than it's, or maybe it's 4 million pieces, and we're like, oh, man, we really do need help, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? I just
Well,
wanna see what
I
we're
mean, I think we have redevelopment we need to think about, but I think we need to have conversations about the lake as well also. I think the lake's one of the opportunities that will probably redevelop in the future, and what do you want that to look like? So where you are today, you're probably gonna have certain areas that will redevelop.
Right.
And I think the lake will be one, which isn't in your town. It's in your ETJ going out towards the lake. So do you want to put a plan together and work with the Corps? You know, what do you want that to look like? So I don't think obviously it's about properties that are still vacant.
I just wanna see
But
what-
towns redevelop all the time.
Right.
We did a lake area take line ordinance for both the cities of Rowlett, Heath, and I think Sunnyvale that allowed public access and boat docks and use along their lakes that were specific. So, you know, a lot of those organizations, the Corps and everything, they have dwindling funds, and they're looking, and the citizens are wanting to have access to those amenities. But the Corps wants, of course, want to make sure that the water quality and safety and everything is there, but there is a way to work together to give both entities kind of what they desire and the protection that they need. So, you know, you all are blessed with water frontage, and that is a huge amenity.
Well, Lake Levon's a little bit unique. It's not anywhere close to a constant level lake. It's a flood control lake. So
Yeah.
we go from, you can't get to the boat ramps because everything's underwater, to
Yeah.
you can't launch a boat because the ramp doesn't meet the water.
Yeah.
So it's, the Corps owns up to a certain elevation all the way around
Right.
just to control that. Because they don't want anybody building on the waterfronts because
Exactly.
if their dock gets flooded out and they don't want somebody coming after them for putting too much water in the lake.
Exactly, but what the community usually likes is public access to that water's edge. So trails and overlooks and recreational amenities, all you have to do is work out a compromise, a plan with the Corps that gives them the value that they want. And it's not necessarily private
Yeah.
development, but it's the components that makes this a lakefront community.
Yeah. And there is an equestrian trail all the way through our ETJ down there.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, clearly there would need to be a future land use element. There would probably need to be a mobility element. Goals and objectives and everything can be included within the
Yeah, I'm
land.
just not, like city government, what would that element entail? So do you have anything that breaks down the different elements and what they mean?
Why don't I send you something?
Okay.
Well, how about if I send Scott an email and he'll get it to you all, and I'll just give you the components that are within the traditional elements. But also take a look at, take a look at Sanger, take a look at Greenville, take a look at Fairview as examples. But again, like I say, they're all tailored specifically for their community. But I'll send Scott an email, and he'll have a little bit of detail under each of those, and then you can determine what are the keys elements. Yeah. And that can go on between this month and next month's meeting.
Thank you, it's good information.
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate your time. Appreciate everybody's input. Scott, we
So
good?
our next meeting with Rick, I would assume we want to talk about potential costs based upon the elements, talk about elements we want to see in the plan.
Yeah, and then he was gonna come up with 3 potential scenarios, right? So it would be, at least that would be more knowledgeable.
Okay. That's it?
Okay, we're ready to move on then?
Yes, sir.
All right, so regular agenda item 5.2, discussion regarding graffiti ordinance. Is there?
Nice work there. Did you find a template or an existing ordinance that kind of gave you some of this information?
Well, I can't take all the credit. I got input and advice from Ms. Lita Swander back there, of course.
Pretty good.
You want me to read through it and have some comments or anything as we go?
It looks pretty good. The thing I've got the question on is up in the definitions. The only thing approaching graffiti I can recall in this town is we had for the last election, we had a guy paint the side of his barn with a big Trump, pro-Trump mural. Would that be considered graffiti? He doesn't have a sign permit, it's his private property, but he's painted the whole side of his barn with this political slogan. It could be one side or the other, doesn't really matter. But is that something that this ordinance would say?
Are you a hater?
Is graffiti? Yeah, I don't know, defining it is,
What was it, just a Trump or?
in this particular case, he was pro-Trump. It really doesn't matter who he was for or against.
I would almost
But
consider that a sign.
the side of his barn had
Well, I think he would
extremely large.
Yeah.
I think he would be an authorized, person, not his, property owner to paint on his own property.
Okay.
If he approved.
So unauthorized, it doesn't have to be authorized by the city, but by the property owner. Okay.
And so we have penalties, I was reading the removal costs, and that's at the responsibility of the property owner. Now let's just pretend that someone spray paints the side of my house and I like it. It's unauthorized, but I've decided, That looks kind of nice. But then I would be responsible to remove it, and failure to do so would result in a fine. I don't know about that. Now, if it was a business maybe, and it was offensive in some way, I don't know. I don't even know how you measure that, but
My question with the graffiti ordinance as a whole was, if you do it to someone's private property, to me that would be that's a criminal offense, right? Like you would call the police and say, hey, someone attacked my house. At the same time, if we did the same thing here, and we painted the city hall with something, same thing, they would call the police and file like a report. So in regards to needing an ordinance, I don't know if we have to, I don't know if we have to have one, if it has to be super specific, because to me they're both, if you have a problem with it, you're going to file the report with the police. Because then that kind of goes with what you're saying, is what if you like it? Well, then you're probably not going to call the police and tell them, hey, my house got spray painted or whatever.
She's gonna do the other side of the house.
Yeah, exactly.
this part of it.
So I think, it makes sense, I mean, for like public property, I totally get it too. But then at the same time, if it's public property, are you taking it into your own hands being the city, or are the police responsible? Because if we have to have an ordinance for it, then to me it makes it sound like we don't have one, I can come up and I can just spray paint the wall tomorrow and I can't get in trouble for it. But I know that's not true. So that's where I was having trouble with the ordinance as a whole, is just understanding what's our purpose for it? Do we have to have one? How detailed do we need to be? Because I think this sounds awesome, but how much do we need it for those reasons that y'all talked about and stuff? And I don't have an answer. Just,
But I mean, the driver for this was because someone put some stripes in a road for a public road.
Right.
I mean, that was-
Where it came from was we had a citizen that painted parking stripes because they had weekly garage sales. So what happened was, we wanted to clarify, before we painted Vista Oaks neighborhood, could we, many different ways. Can we just clean it? Do we put the cost of cleaning it on that property owner, which you can't do without a graffiti ordinance, okay? But it being public property, we have the complete right to remove it at our expense. And it got into some of those. And Travis was just confused, thinking it was on private property when he said, we have to do it at our expense. Well, if it's on private property, of course, but it being public property, we can remove it at any time. We're not going to bill anybody for it. We power watch it all, call it done, and go ahead with our projects. So it was just a clarification thing. And he misspoke, and then he clarified it, and he said we have the right, without any kind of ordinance, to clean our own streets.
So then do we need the graffiti ordinance?
I still look at graffiti as spray painting on buildings. We talk a lot of growing commercial in this area, and if we have a new gas station down the street, don't know who's spray painting their names and stuff on the side of it, it's like you can't really call the police on somebody that you don't know who did it. It just seems more of a proactive versus reactive thing that gets discussed a lot in the meetings, that there's no sort of ordinance about it. It doesn't seem that difficult to make some sort of it.
Well, the clarification from Travis on that was, let's say that somebody that you don't know goes by and paints the side of a gas station with graffiti, and it's offensive. And the question is, if you don't have an ordinance like that, then we can talk to the owner, but the city has to, if we say it's offensive, then we have to pay to have it removed. You cannot force that private citizen to remove it at their expense. So that's where the gray area comes in on the payment of removing it. And so that's the bottom line with it. Public is us. Private, it gets a little bit sticky, and if you were going to try to force someone to clean their own property, I'd say you talk to a code enforcement man, Travis, and find out more insights from him.
So then that would be, we would have to expand for public, it would be the ordinances, who's responsible, I guess. And like maybe a time frame, because you're not gonna say, if you give it to the owner of the building, you've got a week to get rid of it, because they may just say, we've seen plenty of things that it stays on forever. And then I guess for private owners, it would be like Bob was saying with the Trump sign, is what is considered by code enforcement, what would be considered offensive for the town, because you're gonna get real sticky, right? So it would be, we'd wanna be, I guess, maybe more specific? Too specific?
I'm not exactly sure how you write that, but.
I don't either, but that's what I'm just,
Without exception, somebody's gonna put up something somewhere and their neighbor who they don't get along with
It's
is
gonna
gonna
find
object
it
to it.
offensive,
And
yeah.
that's just the nature of the city being in the middle of all that kind of stuff, because sometimes the neighbors don't like to talk to each other, they just like to come up to town hall and complain to the city. So you need to take care of that.
Well, that sounds more like a sign ordinance though, a big billboard on the side of the building.
Yeah,
that goes
but it was,
professional.
it was political, so you couldn't really do anything with it.
Well, I have a question. First of all, thanks for doing that. I appreciate both of you taking a stab at an ordinance, and I realize we need to get moving on some of them. But as you look at both of them, they're two different styles, which is okay, I guess. But are we going to, I'm trying to figure out what process we're going to use for creating or adjusting ordinances so that when you put them all together, that they kind of look similar, like a template. Do they have to go through legal review? I mean, I don't know that we've established that process, right?
I would think this is a good rough draft if this is the way the council wants to go. You would give it to the council and let them refine it. They're the ones that enact the law, we don't have to do all the work.
We're just gonna recommend.
You've done a lot of work already, but you give it to council, and if there's something about it that they don't like, or that legal counsel has advised them that they need to revise, then that would be up to them to do that, not P&Z. If they want a graffiti ordinance, this is a pretty good start.
I just think about if my kids were to, when they were younger, wouldn't do it now, but they were to take some spray paint and spray, say, my fence line or something, then could the code enforcement come through and say, well, you have this sprayed, it's graffiti, you have so many days to fix it, or you'll be charged and we'll fix it? I don't know how I feel about that. That's the only.
Well, would you feel that it was graffiti?
I mean, I wouldn't feel it was
Would it be
graffiti, I would feel like my kids
authorized?
just messed up my fence.
Authorized or unauthorized? Are they authorized to spray your fence? like
They
that?
would not have been authorized to spray my fence, but my daughter's very creative and loved to spray paint everything, or color or marker on everything in our house, so, I don't know. I mean, just to define it, I don't mind a graffiti ordinance, but just to define exactly what is considered graffiti and what should be mandated to be removed, I think that's the thing that's, like, I can go through sections, like section 2 is okay, section 6 is okay, but there's, maybe it's 3 and 4 that are.
I think that's the biggest,
Part, yeah.
Thing of it, is it authorized or unauthorized?
Because the property owner's the victim already.
Well, I even go back on the stripes, is that graffiti? The definition of graffiti is stripes on the line. Would that even be considered graffiti? Or is
it's an
that
unauthorized marking.
just any kind of marking? So someone, there's a straight line to mark where the gas line
Right,
is,
spray,
and you don't like
paint,
it,
spray
then
mark.
is that, you know what I'm saying?
It's
You
just
go-
public property. I think the way Travis meant it was defaming public property without permission.
Yeah, and this
Oh, we
one
used to
says
have-
unlawful, any public or private property without prior consent. Even the possession of spray paint and markers with the intent to use them in a public space.
Unfortunately, when you start seeing graffiti, and there is usually a lot of offensive stuff in it.
Yeah,
We used to have transformers painted because of all the stuff that was written on it, and it wasn't the companies doing it, it was someone doing it, but to be a good company in the community, you take care of it and you cover it up, you know, so. There's a cost with that.
So why would this ordinance even need to cover private property? It needs to just cover public. Because if you're a private citizen and someone destroys or damages your property, you're gonna file a report, which then, for you to remove it, you can either do it yourself or you file for your insurance. So I don't see a reason to even have this for private citizens. So the gentleman who painted the stripes on the road destroyed or damaged public property. Legally, he would be responsible to clean it.
if we had the
So
ordinance.
choose, if we had an
Yeah.
ordinance.
Yeah,
So I think it would be best to worry about the public. And then on down the line, if you do this comprehensive plan, then you've got to think about commercial property. Because again, they would hopefully file a complaint with the police and then go through their insurance for damages if they couldn't find the person that did it.
I think the only caveat to that is if it is offensive to somebody else, that.
That you have to define offensive.
Well, no, I know, no, but I.
You know, because
but-
people do,
But
I
you do
mean-
have to, you'd have to address someone if they call in and they're very upset. and-
Yeah.
And some of the profanity they could have used, you don't know, I'm
Yeah.
just taking it that extreme.
And I hate
That's
to
the only
say some
place
of
I'm saying
the
could
tagging,
change that a little bit.
I don't even know what those symbols mean, and I would drive by it and never even think about it. Because my kids are grown and gone. You know, when they're around, then you hear all that, but, you know, as an empty nester, it would literally have to be, you know, anatomy or something.
And I think the difference here is instead of offensive and things like that, it's just unauthorized. Because then you don't have to like box it into something, there's no like question. It either is or is not authorized. And then you don't have to worry about what the material is, it's just, it is not.
You can always take what you propose, you can always send that to Travis. He's offered to take a look at whatever you come up with, compare it with what he deals with in other cities, and work with you to refine what needs to, for him to be able to do his job.
That sounds like the best course of action. But yeah, maybe the property owner should be changed to commercial property owner in public areas versus ruling out residential property owners then? That's-
Because are you gonna send me a letter if someone TPs my house?
Well, I've
That's
never-
unauthorized. You know, it's not paint or markers or whatever, but it's still, in a sense, graffiti.
Exactly.
Now, HOA would write you a letter, and that's why we moved out here. 'Cause I don't want to play the HOA game.
So the decision is to table this for further work?
Yeah, I make a motion to table this for further work.
A second.
All in favor? Okay, that passed. All right, we move on to 5.3, discussion regarding the fence ordinance.
I sent this to Gary just to give y'all something to work on. So I had a problem when I was running code out here in this town, which is we charge a fence permit, but we don't have a fence ordinance. So we either we need to get rid of the fence permit, or we need to have an ordinance, and that ordinance needs to include things like, we have a 42-inch height for front yard fences, but if you go to Home Depot, you can't buy a 42-inch fence. It's gonna be 48. So we need to take a look at that. We need to take a look at above-ground swimming pools and fence ordinances that have to deal with them. If they have a 48-inch sidewalk, they don't need a fence. But if it's a 42-inch pool, possibly it does according to state law. So I sent it to Gary as something for you guys to look into and work on. Since we don't have any kind of fence ordinance at all, it makes it very difficult for Travis, our code inspector, to be able to go out and look at a fence. There's one over by me, it's a barbed wire fence that hasn't been taken care of in about 30 years. Well, the problem is the kids like to run between the different neighborhoods. So if they got hung up in a barbed wire fence that hasn't been repaired in over 30 years, it's a problem. So again, there's something in there for you guys to consider looking at some kind of maintenance thing, just to make sure that fence and gates that are supposed to be locked are locked. The maintenance is something that Travis can look at if it's completely out of realm. Not to be a code Nazi, but just to have a fence ordinance to substantiate the permit.
And if I'm reading this right, wooden posts. Mayor,
That's a good question.
I'm sorry, Bob.
if I'm reading this right, we require a minimum of 2 3/8-inch metal posts set 2 feet deep in concrete. If somebody wants to put up a wooden 2-rail fence, they'd have to.
Again,
have metal posts?
this was for you guys to take a look at.
Okay.
This was pulled from probably 10 different cities, 10 different the facts that could go in. And in black mud, I wouldn't dare put a fence in with 2-foot concrete. You know, go deeper than that, you're in trouble. But again, that's up to the homeowner, right? So if the fence leans over past, some towns have a 70-degree rule. So I have a neighbor behind me, in fact, that his fence over the years has leaned over where I can't mow within 3 feet of it. I have to weed eat it. So the question is, can I move it without getting sued? Or can the code guy make him straighten it up so I can mow my property? That's part of that fence ordinance maintenance program. So again, this was just for you guys to work on together and then eventually send it up to the council and let them consider it, since we do charge a permit for it.
And that makes me feel much better, because when I was reading through this, I was.
No, it's
I was
just
losing my
ideas.
mind.
It's just things. It's not finished at all.
Okay. Then I don't think
Well,
any
these
of
are
my
just some
fence-
references to which
Yeah,
one to start.
okay.
That's it.
Okay,
All right, so
thank you.
I realize it's kind of late. Would it be okay if we table this? to the
Oh,
next meeting?
absolutely. This for y'all working over the next couple of months.
Okay, because then now that we understand that, we probably will come back from the next meeting with some suggestions.
I'm sorry, I thought I put that in my email to get to work on it.
Yeah, I thought that too, but then I saw that I might go to jail for a year. I totally forgot the email. I'm sorry, you cleaned my head.
He's shaking over there.
All right, well then, I make a motion that we table this for the next meeting and maybe come with some additional edits for this for the next time, due to time.
I'll second it.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay, so be it. Now, we're okay, so we're going to call an executive session as authorized by Chapter 551, Subchapter D of the Texas Government Code. The regular meeting will be convened into a closed executive under the following exceptions. Section 551.087, deliberation regarding economic development, negotiations, information from business prospects. So,
Gary, can I make a request?
sure.
That, since the council will be looking at this, that we would allow the mayor to attend the executive session?
Yes, sure.
Okay.
Wait.
All right, go ahead.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the executive session.
Well, was there any, and there's number eight, which is action on the executive session items.
No.
We're just gonna wait until next P and Z?
Yes.
All right. Okay, sir, go for
I
it.
make a motion, we close the executive session.
I second that motion.
Aye.
Aye.
All right. And number 9, let's give a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned.